Smith Carter stood in the open helicopter doorway, rain streaking down his dark, scarred face, his uniform soaked through. His steady brown eyes, once filled with quiet forgiveness, now held only sorrow. "You don't get to mock a man's wings and then beg him not to fly," he said softly before the aircraft lifted away. The woman who had once laughed at the janitor was now watching the only man who truly saw her disappear into the storm she created. Before we go into our story for today, comment which city you are watching from. Also subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any of our stories. Smith Carter was a quiet man, the kind of person you barely noticed until the floor was spotless and the broken coffee machine was suddenly working again. He spent his days in the shining, futuristic halls of Skylinks Technologies, moving like a shadow. This wasn't just any company. It was a kingdom of glass and steel built on the clouds of aviation deals. And Smith, with his mop and toolbox, was at the very bottom of the ladder. You wouldn't know it to look at him, but Smith wasn't simple. He was tall, maybe mid-30s, with a strong, gentle face and eyes that held a steady, thoughtful calm. The kind of calm you see in people who've seen a lot of life. He wore the standard navy blue uniform, slightly faded from countless washes, but he always looked neat, his work boots polished. His movements were slow and deliberate, never rushed. He just fixed things, whether it was a spilled drink or a complicated plumbing issue in the executive washroom. The queen of this kingdom was Victoria Steele. Now, there was a woman who commanded attention. She was in her late 20s, stunning in a way that felt expensive and untouchable. Victoria ran Skylinks with a will of iron. Her tailor-made suits looked like armor, and her sharp, dark eyes were always analyzing, judging, and rarely satisfied. The whole company knew her story. A self-made billionaire, brilliant but absolutely merciless when it came to business. People respected her, sure, but they definitely feared her temper. She saved her softest voice for bankers and her absolute sharpest for anyone she considered beneath her. One clear, crisp evening, the rooftop terrace of Skylinks was alive with a lavish celebration. Fancy people in expensive clothes were clinking champagne glasses. Smith was discreetly emptying a waste bin near the corner when Victoria's voice, laced with frustration, cut through the jazz music. She was arguing on her phone, pacing near a bank of glass doors. "A 7% failure rate is not acceptable, Jeremy. That cargo jet deal is sinking, and your solution is just a fancy new paint job? I need to know why the stabilizer system is failing, not what color the tail fin should be." She slammed her phone shut, her chest rising and falling with fury. Smith paused. He wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but he couldn't help but hear the words stabilizer system. He hesitated, his heart beating a little faster. He should have just walked away, but something in her desperate frustration, something real beneath the CEO mask, held him. Taking a deep breath, he stepped slightly forward. "Excuse me, Ms. Steele," he said, his voice surprisingly deep and quiet. Victoria spun around, her beautiful face tightening into a mask of pure annoyance at the interruption. "What is it?" "Forgive me," Smith continued calmly, looking her right in the eye. "But based on what you said, if it's the A3-50 model, the stabilizer issue isn't in the fins. It's usually a pressure valve calibration problem in the hydraulics. They put a batch of faulty valves in the 2021 models. A quick manual override adjustment could fix it for now, long enough to close your deal." The effect was instant. Victoria went silent. Not because she was impressed, but because she was furious that a man with a cleaning cart had dared to interrupt her with technical advice. The crowd of executives nearby went silent too, watching the train wreck. Then, Victoria did what she did best. She showed cruelty. Her lips curled into a slow, mocking smile, the kind that promised pain. Her laughter started soft and low, then erupted, echoing over the expensive city view. "Oh, really?" she practically shrieked, clutching her chest for dramatic effect. The crowd joined in, nervous but eager to please the boss. "The janitor thinks he knows how to run an aviation company. I should put you on the board, Mr. Carter. What's next? Are you going to fly the company chopper to the next meeting?" She walked right up to him, the scent of her expensive perfume filling the air. She pointed a perfectly manicured finger toward her stunning, midnight black personal helicopter sitting like a trophy on the landing pad nearby. "Tell you what?" she sneered, her eyes glittering with malice. The laughter swelled again. "If you can fly that thing, I'll marry you." The laughter on the rooftop absolutely erupted. People were wiping tears from their eyes, thrilled by the spectacle of the Queen humiliating the little guy. But Smith Carter didn't flinch. His faint smile didn't vanish. His eyes, fixed on Victoria's triumphant face, were steady as a rock. "Be careful what you promise, Miss Steele," he said softly, his voice cutting through the noise like a single bell. That simple, confident statement, delivered without a hint of fear or anger, silenced the laughter for just a moment. Everyone felt a flicker of confusion, a tiny, strange chill. But before anyone could process it, Victoria tossed her head back and the party roared back to life, everyone desperate to forget the awkward silence and prove they were still on the winning side. Smith just nodded once, picked up his cleaning bucket, and quietly pushed his cart toward the elevator. He left Victoria basking in her shallow victory, but the promise, a foolish, cruel dare, now hung between them like a challenge waiting to be accepted. This is an incredible turn. The revelation that Smith is a decorated pilot on a secret mission for justice raises the stakes immensely. It explains his calm confidence and sets the stage for his confrontation with Victoria. When Smith Carter stepped into the elevator that night, leaving the cold laughter of the rooftop behind, he wasn't just leaving a party. He was walking away from a taunt that had just handed him exactly what he'd been waiting for. You see, the truth about Smith wasn't written on his name tag or his janitor uniform. His calm eyes and steady hands weren't just the signs of a good maintenance man. They were the markings of someone who had once stood at the absolute top of the world. Long before he was pushing a mop bucket through the halls of Skylinks Technologies, Smith Carter was Captain Smith Carter of the U.S. Air Force. The name might have changed a little in the paperwork, but the man was pure steel underneath that modest blue shirt. He wasn't just a pilot. He was an ace. The kind of pilot who could make a billion-dollar machine dance in the sky. He had a brilliance that went beyond the cockpit. Smith was also the co-engineer and heart behind a truly revolutionary flight technology. They called it Etherwing. Imagine a system so smart, so advanced, it could practically fly a jet better than a human. It was the future of aviation, capable of near-autonomous, flawless flight. This was his baby, his masterpiece. His co-founder, Marcus, was his closest friend, a brother, really. They built Etherwing in a small garage, fueled by bad coffee and a shared dream. They were going to change the world. But that world crumbled around them. One terrible night, Marcus died. It was officially ruled a tragic accident, a sudden health failure. But Smith, the engineer, the pilot, the man who knew Marcus better than anyone, knew something was desperately wrong. The circumstances were suspicious, the details too neat. And almost immediately after, their technology, Etherwing, vanished. Gone. Smith dug for months, following the trail of money and deceit like a skilled tracker. And every thread, every clue, led him to the same, massive, gleaming place, Skylinks Technologies. This wasn't just a place that bought the stolen tech. Smith was convinced they were the ones who orchestrated the whole thing. The theft, the cover-up, and Marcus's terrible death. To the world, Captain Smith Carter was gone. After the official accident that took Marcus, Smith himself had vanished, assumed to be lost and broken. But he wasn't broken. He was waiting. He adopted a new identity, found a new name, and pulled off one of the greatest undercover moves you could imagine. He went from flying the most advanced jets in the world to sweeping floors at the very company that ruined his life. It was brilliant, terrifying, and unbelievably patient. He wasn't there for a paycheck, though he took one to blend in. He was there for justice. Every mop stroke, every polish of the glass, every time he overheard a VP complaining in the hall, he was putting together pieces of the biggest puzzle of his life. He was a ghost in the machine, listening to the secrets whispered in the very rooms where decisions were made to profit off his friend's memory. Now, standing in the quiet of the maintenance closet, Smith stared at the reflection of the janitor in the dusty mirror. But all he saw was the pilot staring back. He reached into his breast pocket and pulled out a small, worn photograph. It was a picture of him and Marcus, two grinning guys in their 20s, standing proudly next to their first working prototype. He ran a thumb over his friend's face. "They just gave me the keys, buddy," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. Victoria Steele. She had no idea who she was mocking, did she? The helicopter challenge wasn't a punishment for him. It was an open door. She thought she was humiliating a janitor, but she had just given a highly decorated Air Force captain permission to walk onto her landing pad and prove his worth. It was the perfect, public moment to reveal the strength she believed he lacked. He put the picture away, squared his shoulders, and let the ghost of Captain Carter settle back into the quiet confidence of Smith the janitor. The time for waiting was over. Tomorrow, the whole company would learn that you should never underestimate the man who cleans up your mess. Hope was about to take flight. This is the payoff moment the audience has been waiting for. The sequence of Smith calmly requesting access and then executing the perfect flight delivers massive satisfaction. The days after that disastrous party felt strange at Skylinks Technologies. Everyone was still whispering about the moment the CEO, Victoria Steele, had dared the janitor to fly her helicopter. It was a joke to them, a moment of cruelty they'd all laughed at. But to Smith Carter, it was a contract. A few days later, Smith did the simplest thing imaginable. He filed a work order. He quietly requested maintenance access to the rooftop helipad and to Victoria's magnificent, midnight black helicopter. The reason listed? Routine detailing and refuel. The request was instantly approved. Why wouldn't it be? Who would question the janitor needing to clean the boss's toy? Nobody even glanced at the paperwork. That's the power of being invisible. So, while the executives were busy in their glass offices, Smith was on the roof, but he wasn't there with a rag and polish. He was there with the sharp, focused mind of a decorated Air Force captain. He walked around the helicopter, not cleaning, but inspecting. His hands ran over the rotors, his eyes scanned the panels. He was checking the machine the way a maestro checks his instrument before a concert. Later that afternoon, the rooftop doors slid open and a wave of noise and high-powered energy swept in. It was Victoria Steele, dressed impeccably, leading a group of very important international investors. She'd brought them up to the roof to show off the company's pride and joy, her personal aircraft, a symbol of Skylinks' untouchable success. She was mid-sentence, talking about innovation and market dominance, when her voice suddenly cut off. The group stopped dead. Right next to her gleaming helicopter, standing like he owned the place, was Smith. He wasn't detailing anything. He was simply standing there, straight-backed and calm, his janitor uniform looking oddly respectable against the backdrop of the city skyline. Victoria's beautiful face tightened with annoyance. She hated disruptions, especially in front of money. "Move aside, janitor," she said, her voice sharp and low, carrying a warning edge. "This is a private meeting. You're done here." But Smith didn't move aside. He looked at her, then calmly turned his back on the horrified executives, and climbed the small steps right into the cockpit. He settled into the pilot's seat like he was coming home. A wave of shocked murmuring went through Victoria's entourage. She started forward, fury clouding her eyes. "What do you think you're doing, Carter? Get out of my..." She never finished the sentence. Smith's hands moved over the controls with an ancient, fluid familiarity. There was no fumbling, no hesitation. The low whine of the engine began, smooth and powerful. He powered up the rotor system. The huge blades above them began to slice the air, slowly at first, then faster and faster, a sound that quickly became a deafening roar. Victoria was rooted to the spot, staring up, her mouth slightly open. The helicopter was alive, and it was alive under the touch of the man she paid to clean her toilets. The machine didn't shudder or struggle. It moved with perfect, controlled grace. Smith pulled up on the collective pitch lever, and within seconds, the aircraft lifted off the ground. The landing skids floated a few feet above the rooftop, stirring a powerful wind that whipped Victoria's expensive hair around her face. He held the hover for a brief, pregnant moment, looking down through the glass at the tiny, shocked figures on the roof. Then, with the effortless skill of a true master, Smith tilted the controls and ascended smoothly, arching out and up into the deep orange of the setting sun. Victoria stood frozen. The champagne glass she was holding trembled violently in her hand, the expensive liquid splashing onto the pristine concrete. The investors were utterly silent, necks craned toward the sky where the black helicopter, her helicopter, was now a graceful dot against the horizon. It felt like an eternity, but it was maybe only 10 minutes. Then, the black shape appeared again, dropping from the sky. Smith brought the machine down with flawless, unbelievable precision. The landing was soft, a mere whisper of metal kissing concrete. He shut down the system, the huge blades slowing to a final, elegant stop. He climbed out of the cockpit, his face unreadable, completely calm. The silence on the rooftop was so thick you could almost taste it. Smith walked right up to the stunned CEO. He met her wide, shocked eyes, ignoring the circle of aghast executives around them. He kept his voice steady, referencing the challenge she had so carelessly thrown. "You said you'd marry the man who could fly it," he said softly, the words loaded with meaning. He didn't wait for a reply. He simply turned his back on the frozen queen and the silent crowd, and walked across the rooftop, leaving her there with the truth hanging in the air. He hadn't just flown a helicopter, he had reclaimed his power. This is the critical chapter where the hunter becomes the hunted, and the fascination begins to turn into obsession for Victoria. It perfectly bridges the high-action moment with the deep, corporate conspiracy. The perfect, silent landing of her black helicopter had done more than just shock Victoria Steele. It had cracked the foundation of her entire world. The laughter was gone, replaced by a churning mixture of pure humiliation and unwilling fascination. She couldn't shake the image of Smith, the man she paid to clean her floors, sitting in the pilot's seat, handling her $1 million aircraft like it was a bicycle. That level of skill wasn't learned from a YouTube video. It was forged in a serious, dangerous place. Back in her sprawling penthouse office, Victoria didn't sleep. She sat at her massive mahogany desk and started digging. She ordered an immediate, comprehensive background check on Smith Carter, waving away the head of Human Resources' confused protests. She needed to know who this phantom was. But the results were baffling. There was almost nothing on record. A recent social security number, a basic address in a low-rent area, and a short history of cleaning jobs. No past employment in aviation, no military service, no college transcripts, no family history. He was a ghost. It was like someone had carefully manufactured a disposable identity just a few years ago. The more she dug, the more furious and confused she became. How did a man with no history fly a helicopter with the skill of an Air Force ace? And why did he know the obscure technical details about the A350 jet stabilizer system she'd been arguing about? The answers simply didn't exist in the files. The questions about Smith Carter began to surface like rocks in a low tide, hard and sharp. Meanwhile, Smith's quiet movements around the gleaming towers of Skylinks grew noticeably bolder. He was still the janitor, mopping floors and emptying bins, but his routine changed. He started working later, moving more often through restricted areas. He slipped into the dark, silent data rooms, not to clean the vents, but to access files that were locked away behind high-level security. He wasn't subtle in the way a thief is subtle. He was subtle in the way a sniper is subtle, leaving only the faintest trace. He was beginning to leave subtle breadcrumbs, calculated clues that only a mind as sharp and ruthless as Victoria's would spot. A server log that showed a minor access point exploited and immediately closed. A financial report left slightly ajar on a desk after hours. It was as if he wanted her to find him out. He wasn't hiding. He was inviting her into the mystery. One evening, deep into the night, Victoria was reviewing security footage for the third time when she spotted him on camera near her Vice President of Finance's locked office. She was convinced. This was no coincidence. She grabbed her keycard and raced down the silent hallway, her heart pounding a frantic, irregular rhythm against her ribs. She found Smith in the hallway, pushing his cart toward the service elevator. "Stop right there, Carter," she demanded, her voice echoing in the deserted corridor. Smith stopped, but he didn't turn around right away. He slowly set his cleaning bucket down. When he finally faced her, his eyes were calm as ever, but there was a steel defiance in his gaze she had never seen before. "You're not a janitor," she accused, walking closer, her voice shaking with controlled anger. "You have no record. You're lying. Who are you, and what are you doing in my company?" Smith simply smiled that faint, knowing smile. He wasn't afraid of her wealth, her power, or her anger. This infuriated her more than anything. He took a step toward her, closing the space between them. "I'm the person who cleans up the biggest messes, Ms. Steele," he said, his voice low and serious. His eyes didn't leave hers. "You should really take a closer look at what this company was built on." And then, he walked past her, collected his cart, and disappeared into the open service elevator. The doors slid shut, leaving Victoria standing alone in the cold, corporate silence, completely shaken. His words weren't a threat. They were a profound, unsettling truth. She realized then that the dare she had issued on the rooftop was now threatening to expose everything she thought she knew about her billion-dollar empire. The hunt was on, but she wasn't sure if she was the hunter or the prey. This is the climactic moment where the tables completely turn, and Victoria's empire crumbles around her. The realization of her own hypocrisy and Smith's true identity provides the powerful emotional payoff. The days that followed Smith's mysterious warning felt like a countdown clock ticking inside the walls of Skylinks. Victoria Steele was frantic, digging deeper into her company's history, but she couldn't find anything solid. She just felt that chill of something huge and dangerous looming. Then, the floor dropped out. Chaos didn't strike Skylinks with a boom, but with a series of furious phone calls. A mysterious, massive lawsuit hit the company, slamming into the corporate headquarters like a torpedo. The accusation? Cold, hard intellectual property theft. The plaintiff was a small, almost unknown firm called Etherwing Systems. Victoria's board went into a full-blown panic. The news was instantly public, and Skylinks' stock prices plummeted faster than a stone. The lawyers were working around the clock, trying to trace the roots of this Etherwing, but they kept hitting dead ends. Who was this person or group strong enough to take down a giant? Victoria, pacing her office like a caged tiger, demanded answers. She ripped through old legal files, desperate to find a paper trail. She found documents from years ago, sealed with 100 layers of corporate secrecy, referencing a technology acquisition that had been rushed, shady, and deeply unethical. Then, a single, devastating document was leaked to the board. It wasn't a complex legal filing. It was a simple, sworn statement of ownership from years earlier. It listed the original founders of Etherwing Systems. Victoria read the names. Her blood went cold. The document revealed the truth she had been hunting for. The rightful inventor of the revolutionary flight technology, the core of her company's current success, was none other than Smith Carter, who had been presumed dead in a terrible accident years ago. Her world didn't just crash, it shattered. The realization hit her with the physical force of a punch. The man she had laughed at, the one she had paid to mop up coffee spills, was the genius who had built the very foundation of her multi-billion-dollar empire. He wasn't a janitor who could fly a helicopter. He was the captain she had stolen her destiny from. She didn't call security. She didn't call her lawyers. Driven by a raw, painful need for confrontation, Victoria stormed down to the deserted, lower-level service corridor, her expensive shoes echoing on the concrete. She burst through the door of the small, dusty janitor's room. Smith was there. He wasn't cleaning. He was calmly packing his few, meager personal belongings into a simple canvas bag. The worn photograph of his friend Marcus, a small, faded book, his wallet. His janitor uniform was neatly folded on a metal shelf. Victoria stared at the folded uniform, then at the man standing before her. All her usual power and confidence were gone, replaced by shock and shame. "You set me up," she hissed, her voice a ragged whisper. The words were full of betrayal, though she had no right to feel it. "You came here to ruin me." Smith gently zipped his bag. He didn't raise his voice or show a flicker of anger. He simply looked at her, his expression a quiet mix of sadness and ultimate vindication. "No, Ms. Steele," he said, his voice steady as the sky. "You set yourself up. You built an empire on someone else's wings." The realization was a crushing blow. He hadn't just sued her. He had forced her to see her truth. Her success wasn't due to her merciless genius. It was due to a crime. The memory of her mocking laughter on the rooftop, the cruel dare, the utter dismissal of his worth. It all came flooding back, making the shame nearly unbearable. "Marcus was my friend," Smith continued, his eyes holding a depth of pain she couldn't comprehend. "And you people stole his legacy. I came here for justice. For him." Victoria slumped against the doorframe, unable to stand upright under the weight of the truth. Smith, seeing the devastation in her eyes, didn't gloat. He picked up his bag and walked towards her. He paused right next to her. "The company will survive, Victoria," he said, using her first name for the first time. "It just needs to be built on honesty this time." He then did the most unexpected thing. He reached out and gently squeezed her shoulder, a gesture of profound empathy. He wasn't there to destroy her, only to demand justice for his friend. Smith Carter walked out of that tiny, dusty room and left the building a free man, having achieved what he set out to do. Victoria Steele, the billionaire CEO, was left behind, shaken, humbled, and finally, truly ready to understand the cost of her success. She was ruined, yes, but for the first time in years, she felt a profound, painful sense of hope for a better future, one built on her own integrity, not on stolen wings. Justice had won, and in that moment, she realized she had finally met a man worthy of respect. This is a fantastic development. It introduces a new, even darker antagonist, deepening the conspiracy and shifting the emotional core of the story from corporate theft to shared tragedy and potential partnership. The focus on Victoria's internal transformation is excellent. The destruction of her company's stock was a headline, but the real damage happened inside Victoria Steele. Smith's quiet accusation, "You built an empire on someone else's wings," was ringing in her ears, forcing her to look beyond her own ambition. She had to know the whole, ugly truth. She plunged into her father's old, dusty records. Elias Steele had been a giant in the industry, the founder of Skylinks, and the man she had always idolized. But what she found was a secret chamber of horrors. She sat for 2 straight days in a locked boardroom, surrounded by boxes of decades-old files. The documents detailed the acquisition of a tiny firm called Etherwing. It wasn't a clean buyout. It was a brutal, orchestrated corporate smash and grab. It was her late father who had orchestrated the theft of Smith's revolutionary invention, using every dirty trick in the book to bury the original owners and claim the technology as his own. Victoria's entire world crashed down a second time. Her foundation, her empire, her very reputation. It was all a brilliant, expensive lie built on a single, massive crime. She felt a profound, physical nausea as she realized the man she had mocked and humiliated was the true genius, the rightful heir to what was now her legacy. She found Smith's address on the old janitorial files and drove to a small, unassuming apartment complex across town. She found him packing a small box of books. He didn't look surprised to see her. Her arrogance was completely stripped away, leaving only a trembling vulnerability. Her voice was rough with unshed tears. "My father," she began, the name catching in her throat. "He did it. He stole it all. The files. I found the proof." Smith nodded slowly, his eyes tired but understanding. "I know. That's why I came here." She took a shaky step closer. "But the lawsuit, you could have buried us. You could have destroyed every part of Skylinks. Why didn't you destroy us?" He looked at her then, and for the first time, she saw beyond the janitor's uniform and the Air Force captain's discipline. She saw the wounded man beneath it all, a man who had lost his friend, his invention, and his entire future. "Because not everyone deserves to pay for another person's sins," he said, his voice quiet but profound. "You didn't do this, Victoria. Your father did." This statement hit her harder than any legal threat. It was an act of grace and profound honor from the man she had treated like dirt. Her deep pride gave way to a flooding wave of guilt, and then, slowly, a rising, powerful sense of admiration. She saw him now, intelligent, noble, and worthy of a respect she had never offered anyone. "What happens now?" she asked, her tone entirely changed. It wasn't a demand. It was a plea. Before Smith could answer, the silence of the room was broken by a sudden, urgent buzz from his cell phone. He glanced at the screen, and his calm facade instantly fractured. His face went hard, a look of pure, focused intensity taking over. "This is not over," he murmured, more to himself than to her. He flipped the phone toward her. It was a cryptic message from an anonymous source. It contained a police report from years ago, detailing the night Smith's partner, Marcus, had died. Victoria scanned the document. The official ruling was natural causes, but the message had circled one line: the name of the witness who had first found Marcus. The name was Victor Thorne. Victoria's breath hitched. Victor Thorne wasn't just a name. He was the chairman of Apex Global, Skylynx's most bitter and powerful rival investor. The one who had been putting immense, aggressive pressure on her board for months. Smith's voice was low, heavy with a terrible truth. "We always thought my friend's death was tied to the theft. We thought your father was the only one involved in the cover-up. But Marcus didn't die of a heart attack, Victoria. He was murdered." Victoria realized the chilling implication. Thorne must have been watching them all along, waiting for the perfect moment to not just steal the tech, but to destroy Skylynx entirely in the ensuing chaos. They were no longer on opposite sides of a lawsuit. They were two people standing against a much darker enemy, a killer who was now closing in. The man who was truly responsible for the beginning of Smith's pain was back, and he was coming for them both. The moment the name Damien Rourke, the man responsible for the death of Smith's friend, Marcus, flashed across the screen, the game changed entirely. This wasn't about patents and stock prices anymore. It was about murder and pure malice. Damien Rourke, the powerful chairman of Apex Global, had been waiting in the shadows. He hadn't just arranged the killing of Marcus years ago to steal the Etherwing tech. He was now moving to finish what he started. His goal was simple: take full, absolute control of the weakened Skylynx and bury the Etherwing legacy for good. Smith Carter, the former captain and the now exposed genius, faced an impossible, agonizing choice. The path of revenge was wide open. He could expose Damien publicly, using the proof they had, but that would certainly drag Skylynx into the dirt and destroy hundreds of innocent jobs. Or, he could work with the woman who had mocked him, Victoria Steele, to save what remained and build something better, something honest. For years, the fire of revenge had been the only thing keeping Smith going. Now, looking at Victoria, her face stripped of arrogance, her eyes full of genuine remorse, the fire started to turn into something else: hope. To Smith's surprise, Victoria didn't flee the disaster her father created. She stood firm. "He targeted us both, Smith," she said, her voice steady now, driven by a new resolve. "He used my family's crime to create his own opportunity. I know I deserve to lose everything, but I won't let a murderer win. Let me help fix what my family broke." Smith hesitated. Her sincerity was a powerful force. This wasn't the cold CEO. This was a woman fighting for something beyond money. She was fighting for redemption. He looked at the small photo of Marcus in his hand. He realized his friend wouldn't have wanted more destruction. Justice, yes, but not a scorched earth. "All right," Smith finally agreed, the single word sealing a bond that neither of them could have imagined just a week earlier. They became an unlikely, unstoppable team. Victoria, with her fierce business acumen and deep knowledge of Skylynx's weaknesses, and Smith, with his technical genius, tactical mind, and iron will. They worked side by side, sharing secrets and late-night coffees, united by a shared enemy and a desire for truth. Together, they set the perfect trap. They gathered undeniable evidence of Rourke's involvement in Marcus's death and his predatory corporate maneuvers. In a dramatic presentation to the board, and then leaked directly to global regulatory bodies, they not only exposed Damien Rourke's crimes but provided irrefutable proof that Smith Carter was the true inventor. The impact was immediate and total. Rourke was arrested. The stolen Etherwing patents were legally reclaimed, finally restoring Smith's name and Marcus's legacy. Skylink's technologies survived the storm. The old name was kept, but the company was reborn under entirely new leadership. Victoria and Smith, now equal partners. The new Skylinks was built on a foundation of truth, honor, and the world-changing technology that Smith had originally created. The victory was profound, but beneath the excitement of their success, a silent, unspoken change had taken place between them. They had gone from bitter adversaries to comrades in arms. Their partnership was seamless, their eyes meeting across boardroom tables with a depth of understanding that was rare and electric. The cruel dare of a marriage on a rooftop now felt less like a mockery and more like a strange, accidental prophecy. They didn't dare name the feeling that lingered. It was too fragile, too new, born from the ruins of betrayal and death. But when Smith looked at Victoria, he no longer saw the cold queen. He saw the brave, reformed woman who had stood beside him. And when Victoria looked at Smith, she didn't see the janitor. She saw the honorable, brilliant man who had chosen redemption over revenge. Justice had been served, Rourke was gone, and the future, built on the solid ground of their shared truth, felt brighter and full of unexpected love and possibility. Weeks passed since the chaos had finally settled. Skylink's Technologies was finding its footing again, built now not on stolen secrets but on the solid foundation of honesty, with Smith and Victoria leading the charge as genuine equals. The company felt different. It felt lighter, cleaner, like a building after a massive storm has been cleared away. The change in Victoria was the most profound. She was still sharp and brilliant, but the steel armor had been replaced by a quiet humility and a surprising warmth. She hadn't just gotten justice, she had found her heart. One clear, cold evening, as the city below them was just beginning to sparkle with the rush-hour lights, Victoria sent Smith a simple text, the roof. Bring your jacket. He found her waiting on the massive rooftop helipad. The black helicopter, the machine that had been the start of their impossible story, gleamed under the powerful floodlights. It no longer looked like a symbol of arrogance, but like a testament to everything they had endured and overcome. Victoria was dressed simply, but elegantly, and her eyes, when they met Smith's, held a genuine nervousness. He walked toward her, the strong wind from the city tower whipping around them. It looks quieter now, Smith observed, looking at the aircraft. Victoria smiled softly, a real, unguarded smile that made him catch his breath. Maybe it just knows who the true pilot is now, she replied. She walked closer to the edge of the helipad, looking out over the millions of lights stretching to the horizon. A beautiful, massive view. She turned back to Smith, her voice soft, a hint of deep vulnerability in her tone. Remember what I said that night? Smith nodded, remembering the cruel laughter and the careless, arrogant sneer. If you could fly this. Her voice trailed off, leaving the painful memory of the dare hanging in the air for a moment. She swallowed hard, then finished the thought with quiet conviction. Maybe. I should have meant it. It was a clumsy admission, an apology, and a confession all wrapped up in a single sentence. It was the moment Victoria Steele finally shed the last bit of the spoiled, untouchable CEO. A deep, genuine chuckle escaped Smith's lips. It wasn't mocking. It was warm and gentle. He walked right up to her, his steady eyes holding hers. He didn't use big words or make a grand speech. He simply reached out and took her hand, the hand that had held a trembling champagne glass that night, and brought it to his lips for a soft, reassuring kiss. Then maybe it's time you kept your promise, Miss Steele, he replied, his words carrying the weight of their entire, unbelievable history. Victoria's eyes sparkled, glistening with happy, relieved tears that never fell. They stepped up to the helicopter together. Smith climbed into the pilot's seat, and this time, Victoria didn't sit in the passenger seat. She took the co-pilot's seat right beside him. Smith looked over and saw that she wasn't nervous. She was simply ready. He reached out and covered her hand where it rested on the controls. He started the engine. The powerful whine of the turbine grew into a roar, and the huge rotors began to spin faster and faster, blurring into a protective circle above them. The wind kicked up powerfully, but inside the cockpit, everything felt utterly calm. With the familiar, expert touch of a decorated pilot, Smith eased the collective lever up. Slowly, gracefully, the helicopter lifted into the night sky. As they ascended, the bright, massive world of the city below began to shrink and fade away, losing its noise and its rush. They were up, high above the chaos, the shame, and the lies. In that quiet space between the clouds and the earth, two souls, once bitter enemies, then uneasy partners, and now something deeper, flew side by side. They were bound not by a cruel joke, but by the hard-won clarity of truth, the healing grace of forgiveness, and the gentle, powerful wind beneath their wings. They had found more than just justice. They had found love, taking flight at last. We have come to the end of the story. If this story touched your heart, tell us where you're watching from in the comments below. We love seeing our global family. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss more heartwarming and inspiring stories like this one. And remember, never judge a person by their uniform, because their story might just change your life.